Jesus broke the power of the devil. He set us free from the power of death. In fact, Hebrews 2:15 says, "Have freed those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death." I talked about my own fear of death last time. Have to remember this: the people that the Hebrew writer's talking about here are followers of Jesus. We have no reason to fear death. Probably the other side of this coin is we have no reason to hasten it either. Okay, just a little point here. I look around in my world and I see people who, it seems to me, they're kind of hastening death by their habits, their food intake, for one. Holy smokes. I read a statistic that said 40% of Americans are considered overweight. Now, not all of those are obese, but many are. Obesity, no matter how you slice it, it hastens death. So, okay, that's enough. Keep going, Steve. So, in verse 16, after, I kind of have to think in a very broad spectrum here, from the beginning of this book, where remember the point? Jesus is superior to everything and everybody, and to angels. That's one of the big deals in these opening salvos here. Well, in verse 16, that he picks that theme up a little bit again. For surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. Now, I don't see this as a problem, but there is something to think about here. The big initial point is, hey, Jesus came, he defeated death and the devil and freed us from slavery to the fear of death. And he didn't bring this help for the angels. He brought it for Abraham's descendants. I am a Gentile. I don't have, we did, back some years ago, our daughter Jenny gave us the I don't think it was Ancestry.com, but anyway, where, you send in your DNA and they send back this report of where your genetic origins are, and not a drop of Hebrew blood in me anywhere. So, does Jesus not help me as a Gentile? Because it says it's descendants of Abraham that he helps. All right, let's look at this, and I'll do my best to not drag it out and make too big of a deal of it. But we have to think in terms of, who was this book written to? To Jews. And for them, in terms of history, the time when this book was written, scholars estimate around 68 AD. It was a difficult time for Jews and Christians. Jews had been persecuted for centuries. Anti-Semitism is not a new thing. It's not even a 20th century thing. It's every century. Since before Moses. Okay, written to Hebrews who have a history and background of persecution, struggle, trial. Okay, these are Abraham's descendants physically. They are helped by Jesus, the one who is superior to angels and who broke the slavery of our fear of death. Okay, so if I was a recipient of this letter, if I, as a Jew in century 1, had been given this letter or a fragment of it even to read, and the practice was that when the church came together, someone would read whatever they had of the writings of the apostles, and when this letter was written and received, it would have been copied and then copied again and again, so that more churches would be able to hear the message. So it was read whenever they got together. Okay. This would have been an important word of encouragement to people going through serious difficulty and trial and persecution. Okay, let's think about this other aspect now of the descendants of Abraham. I am not a physical, genetic descendant of Abraham. Well, maybe some of you are. But I am a spiritual descendant. Everyone who said yes to Jesus on his terms is now put into God's family, and we are, by virtue of that, we are at least spiritual descendants of Abraham. What was the outstanding thing about Abraham? Well, he and Sarah had Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob, and Jacob had 12 sons, and the nation of Israel began at that point. Yeah, but the biggest thing about Abraham was his faith. And I am a descendant spiritually of faithful Abraham. Every follower of Jesus is. Okay. Verse 17. For this reason, what reason? That he brought help. He demolished the power of death and Satan's ultimate power. And then he helps those who are Abraham's descendants. For this reason, he had to be made like them, fully human in every way. Pause. I think sometimes I don't know what word I would use. I mistakenly think of Jesus as having, a distinct advantage over me in the fact that he was God and he was perfect. On the other hand, according to the writer here, he was fully human in every way. So though he was God, he was fully human. And that's a conundrum. That how could that be? I can't explain how it could be. I can only say it was. And why? In order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Well, there it is. He became fully human so that he could become a merciful and faithful high priest. Again, the Jews who read this in century 1 would have had they wouldn't have scratched their head about what's the high priest thing here, because until 70 AD, Judaism had a center in Jerusalem at the temple, and there the Jewish yearly calendar revolved around several feasts, and probably the two outstanding feasts would have been Passover and the Day of Atonement. And on both of those days, it was the high priest who took a sacrifice to the altar on behalf of the people. Well, first on behalf of his sin, and then on behalf of the people. And only the high priest could go into the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant was, and they could only go in once a year. There was nothing casual about it. In fact, the high priest had bells on the tassels of their garment. And I read it in a reliable source that they tied a rope around his ankle so that if he went down, if he fainted or died, they would drag him out because nobody else could go in there. It was incredible. And this role of the high priest by Jesus' day had become religious back, centuries before Jesus came. But by the time Jesus was on the scene and the time this book was written, it had also become a political position. They held a lot of power in the Israelite community. These people receiving this book were not, I think very few of them would have been in Jerusalem, because there had been this disbursement. It's called the diaspora, where Jews, due to persecution, left Jerusalem and went to other places in the known world, obviously. Okay. Well, Jesus then became a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God. Not all high priests were merciful or faithful. I mean, think about Annas and Caiaphas. They pronounced the death sentence on Jesus. That's not merciful. That's not faithful to truth. Okay. And here's the most important part, that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. For a merely Jewish high priest, that was done by the slaughter and sacrifice of a perfect lamb. When Jesus made atonement, he became the lamb and was slaughtered and sacrificed for us, for the sins of the people, you and me. Okay, going to leave it there. Come back to it next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.